So again, we're in the coffee shop. We're having a chat. We haven't prepared anything.
Let me get some water then.
Get some more. That's a very good idea. Thank you.
You want some?
Yes, please. And so I am really looking forward to hearing about this because it's like a really bold adventure that you've gone on. So maybe if you can give us a bit of an understanding about Fairphone and also a bit of understanding about yourself, what drew you there, and then we'll have our chat.
Sure. Yeah, so just a bit about myself. I have a background in technology. I have a background in arts, and that's a fantastic combination because, in one hand, I truly believe in technology, and I truly believe that technology can actually do a lot of good. But also, the artistic kind of perspective made me also have a bit of a view on technology and being able to contextualize it. And that has been my work for the last 10, 15 years, working in media labs. I've actually done similar things as the low-tech lab, only with high-tech labs. Setting up labs around the world where people could make stuff themselves in fabrication labs with 3D printing, CNC milling. And through these machines, one of the labs we set up, for example, was in Indonesia, Yogyakarta, where people could make their own lower leg prosthetics with bamboo, but also 3D printing for under $50. So what I've learned there was, especially with fabrication technologies and trying to make them accessible to people, that we've alienated so much from the actual making process and how things get into existence.
Yeah.
That it kind of intrigued me. Like how do we get back that kind of notion of that things are actually made? Products, and you said it before, products have become very, very complex. It's brilliant. Our economic system is actually able to make stuff that we can't really understand as an individual. By working together, we can make this stuff. So the economic system is brilliant. We have more stuff available to ourselves than the Queen of England had in the last century. But so this democratization of stuff, also with the supply chains connected to it, made it that we got alienated from how things are made. And that work was also kind of the starting point for thinking around making a Fairphone.
And with Fairphone, it's the idea is that you buy the Fairphone and you never need to buy another phone. That is kind of the understanding. So it's or certainly not for a long time.
Yeah. So first of all, Fairphone is like any other smartphone. It's just a normal phone. It runs on Android. You can do with it. You can run all your apps. You can even call your mother if you want to. So it's a normal phone. But where we focus on is on two things. One is really making sure that that in the supply chain we do it as good as possible. And just to give you an idea, and as a designer, for me, it's fascinating to understand the fact that everything we use, everything we see, even this microphone, it all comes from the ground. It's stuff we mine somewhere in the world. We get it out of the ground, and we are able to make stuff out of that. So to get it in your hands, a lot of things are needed. You have working conditions in the mines. There's conflicts in Congo, for example, where millions of people have died in the last 10, 15 years in mining related to minerals that we use not only in our phones, but also we use it for our energy transition. Yeah. Cobalt, lithium, it's used in batteries. We use in cars to create this wonderful transition and this wonderful change we're in. Still 25,000 children working in mines, child labor, to make this possible. So, and that's at the start. And then when you go, look through the eyes of electronics or phone, you end up in factories where there's a lot going on. You see a lot of companies pushing phones we don't need. So there's, if you go through that supply chain, there's actually a lot that you can change. But it's big. It's basically the whole world. So what we said is we want to focus on making sure that we create better situations in the mines on certain minerals, that the manufacturing is done in a way that we know that we can improve things in the factory, and that's mainly on working conditions and fairness, but on sustainability. It's actually a very simple calculation. A lot of people are focusing on recycling nowadays. Within consumer electronics, recycling is basically stupid, because what happens is you collect the stuff and you put it in an oven and then you get minerals back. It's stupid. So we said, what if, and that's to get to your point, what if we make a product, a phone, that can last twice as long as any other phone now? That's not the most difficult part. We can make products that last longer. But then we want the consumer, the customer, to actually be able and to lower the thresholds to actually use it longer. And one of the things that we've done is to make it in such a way that people can repair it very easily. If you break the screen, you can repair it yourself. If something breaks, one of the microphones, in Holland we drive around on bikes. I see them in Paris more and more often now. But if you have your phone in your pocket and you make this movement all the time, something might break with the jack where you put your headphones in. So we've isolated all those parts so that you can easily repair it. You just order online a part, or you go to the orange shop and they have the parts, and you just get the parts and you change it yourself.
Wow.
So what we said is we can make phones that last longer, but we also need to have people that want to use those phones longer, and that's where the storytelling comes in. And the storytelling in the supply chain showing, and that relationship I was talking about, how do you make people understand that there's a whole world of minerals and factories and stories behind that product, that I believe can also connect people to those phones. And then there's a simple calculation that comes in, and that is, if you use your phone twice as long, you only need to produce half the amount of phones. If you produce only half the amount of phones, there's only half the amount of electronic waste. And that's impact, real impact that you can have as a customer. Just using a product twice as long is the most sustainable thing you can do. Because once you have the phone in your hand, most of the harm is already done. And that is where we focus on. So
it's kind of like what I'm hearing is, obviously if you at least double the length of the time that the phone is lasting, and also you reduce the impact of that phone, you've got a phone which has a quarter, a fifth, a sixth of the impact over its life cycle of like what's in my pocket at the moment. I've got just a good bog standard Google, I'm afraid.
Yeah, so I'm not saying that there are no phones in the world that can last longer than 1.5 years. There's more phones that can do that. The problem only is that, and then you get to the economics. We're a social enterprise. Fairphone has been set up. We actually started as a campaign, and it has been set up as a company with the sole mission to create a better industry through the making of a phone, a more sustainable consumer electronics industry, a more fair consumer electronics industry. So what we said is we challenge ourselves in the core of our existence as a company as well by saying, guys, listen, you can buy our phones, but make sure that you use them as long as possible. And then you get to the company level. So if you look at metrics, and I always say, in a way, I don't believe in these things within the current system that we can always create win-win situations. It's bullshit. There's no such thing as only win-win situations. There's no such thing as that sustainability is always good for the bottom line. Fine, there are situations, but it's not the real sustainability I'm talking about, because most of the sustainability that I would be talking about is dilemma. And the dilemma that you want to create in your company is basically, we've done that in a really nice way, and I love that, is we've created KPIs, and Luke, he's sitting over there, he's one of our salespeople, so he must. So the salespeople at Fairphone, they have one KPI, and it says, sell as many phones as possible. Shove those boxes, make sure that people walk around with Fairphones everywhere. But, because we believe if we show that this electronics industry, it's good You know, we made our point, like people want more ethical products. But we also don't want people to buy the phone if they already have a phone, or if you have a Fairphone, we want you to use it as long as possible. So there's another KPI in the company that says, we measure, and we set targets on that, how long people actually use their phones. So now there's a dilemma in the head of the salesperson, because the salesperson has to all of a sudden think in terms like, oh shit, who am I going to sell my next phone to? I can't just sell it to this person. So you have to be creative. And just by putting these things at the core of your business, you create, you create kind of human thinking within the minds of the people that have to deal with the daily operations. And I think that's one of the, the beauties of a social enterprise or an ethical business or whatever you might call it, is that because you have this at the core of your mission, you also have an easier answer towards your shareholders. You have an easier answer towards your stakeholders, because everyone, and you have an easier answer towards your customers as well.
Yeah.
Because you can show dilemmas and you say, shit, we can't change everything at once. We do need to sell phones. Please buy our phone. And we know that with every phone we make, we also destroy stuff.
So I think this is a very, very important point that I've been working in and around sustainability for nearly 15 years. And there's this narrative that everything that you do that's sustainable is always going to be good for the bottom line, when actually it's not necessarily. And I think this point of that, there's going to be some dilemmas, there's going to be some challenges, but it's partly having the boldness to go on that journey, which is, I think, what you've done. So just that question that I asked earlier is like, how have you got a story where we can get into about how you've seen a change from kind of passive denial or just passive acceptance to kind of how, your business been taking radical action, and how do we do that, especially thinking about this context of planetary boundaries?
Yeah. It's always a long-term process. Systemic change doesn't go from one day to the other, right? So, but what we have seen, I think one of the best changes that I have seen is that, in a way, I truly believe that Fairphone has been able to create a safe space for companies to also discuss the hard stuff. Yeah. Because as long as we keep running companies, and I'm also talking about customers, as long as we keep looking at companies, as long as we manage the companies from a compliance perspective, that means that you will be risk-avoiding situations. If you want to create change and innovation, you need to reward taking risks. Systems have been set up to actually punish companies if they don't comply with certain sustainability rules in the supply chain. Just to give you an example, one of the first things that we we work in Congo. We work in Congo in mines where we make sure that we bag and tag the minerals so that we know that there's not rebels making money from it, so that we're not fueling conflict. It's fantastic. But I can tell you, I know for 100% sure that we still have child labor in our supply chain. Why? Because we work in Congo. Being able to talk about that makes it possible to actually go to Congo, change the situation there, and we know that most of the reserves of our minerals are actually in those countries. So we will have to, we'll have to find a way to improve the situations over there where it's already hard, and you can only do that by being there. If you are a company and there has been a law set up in those areas that you have to really do due diligence, you take your stuff from these areas. What happened is that a lot of countries just left the area.
Yeah.
So that's the dilemma. So I think for us, you see that a lot of people are actually talking about these things more openly, also companies.
And so obviously, because you've been talking quite a bit about the ethical side of things, and then which is actually part of our kind of almost planetary boundary as well. It's like the human side. Can you give me an example of how you've really worked on the environmental planetary boundary and how you've radically reduced the impact of your phone.
Yeah, so the most important one is that it's a product that that you can lasts longer, that you can, so we support it in a way that you can use it longer. Like I just said, it's really also been acknowledged by the Greenpeace electronic reports. So we perform really well on that level. And we're creating followers in that sense, that also companies are rethinking the way that they use resources in relation to their business models. So just not pushing things. The marketing side, we've been very good at selling stuff that people don't actually need. And I think changing that story towards the consumers in a way that, keep your stuff longer is a really big one. Apart from that, we do use recycled materials in the phones. We are looking at how to reuse minerals that we use from recycled sources and not from virgin mining. I think the whole conversation around ethics and sustainability in electronics was non-existent. I think 3 to 5 years ago, nobody even, if you went to a conference in electronics, and actually still, it's very hard to find sustainability as a subject. And we see that more and more it's getting on the radar of electronics companies. And we have to, if you just think about we think about the digital world, and we always have the idea that data is just data and doesn't have an impact. But there's a whole electronics industry that has to make all these farms and all these machines to keep that running, and that's where we need to surface that. And I think, unfortunately, it's just a start of surfacing the problems. But I do see that the conversation is getting started, luckily, and we are making a huge statement by having people that actually buy our product already.
Absolutely, and for me, I know one of the things I admire is your humility. You're not saying you are a completely sustainable phone. You're as sustainable as you can be. And I remember reading that a little while ago. And that's really important, to be humble, not to try and say that you can do everything. And then also what you're doing is providing leadership. You're demonstrating the art of the possible by telling that your phone is a story. The story is that we can have a radically more sustainable and phone which works to fit within our planetary boundaries. So I just want to thank you for being bold and being one of those heroes of change that we're here to celebrate. So are you able to hang around a little bit if anybody's got any extra questions of you?
I have a short
Wonderful.
Well,
so if you've got any extra questions, then please come and talk. If you want to buy a phone, come and talk to the salesperson that's here. I'm sure he'll be very happy to talk to you. So I just want to finish by thanking all of you for your attention, and I'm looking forward to seeing people around this, because for me, as I say, I'm a very strong supporter of Extinction Rebellion. And the two key demands of Extinction Rebellion is that we need to tell the truth, and Qantas told us the truth of climate change and the planetary boundaries that we're in at the moment. And then we've got to act as if the truth is real. And so that's what we've been coming up with through Clarins, through the Low Tech Lab, and through Fairphone, that people are doing their best to act as if the truth is real, that we are past planetary boundaries and we need to act now. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you around the conference sometime.